Ice Ridge Station hadn't sent a clean signal in 6 days. Orbit Command flagged it as a low-priority black hat, citing routine interference from solar storms, wind shear, and ongoing civil instability in Quadrant Delta. But everyone on the ops deck knew the truth. Ice Ridge was already dead. They just didn't want to log the funeral. The outpost had been one of Earth's last bastions in the Polar Ring, a brutal expanse of glacial desert on the frontier of the Vekari Neutral Zone. It wasn't a station, really. Just a buried bunker with a radar dish, a railgun turret, and 27 unlucky bastards assigned to monitor enemy drift routes. Now there was no radar, no turret, number 27 soldiers. Just one signal, looped and distorted. A broken voice laced with static, whispering coordinates. No name. No cry for help. Just send fire and they're here. Then silence. That was 5 days ago. Then the hunters came. Not search teams. Not Earth Marines. Vekari. A full wool pack. 10 of them, wrapped in thermal bone shroud armor, their faces hidden behind cracked war masks that hissed with translated death chants. 2 heads taller than men. Eyes that glowed like furnace coals. Every motion precise. Every step rehearsed. This wasn't a raid. This was a claim. They wanted trophies. DNA. Tags. Skin. And they knew what was inside. They were here for him. His name was Rylan Ash. Terran Scout Recon, forward Pathfinder class. Twink as hell, frost-cut and wiry, with a jaw that looked sculpted from ruin and eyes that had seen more backstabs than medals. The others had called him Glitch because he moved like a corrupted ghost in Recon drills. Couldn't track him. Couldn't tag him. Couldn't even see him until he wanted you to. Now he was all that was left of Outpost Theta 7. The Vekari hadn't killed everyone. Rylan had. After the first wave hit, and the perimeter mines sang their suicidal melody, Rylan had crawled from the wreckage of comms with a broken leg and 3 cracked ribs. He'd set them with a combat needle, took what supplies hadn't been incinerated, and melted into the ice caves below the station. He was one man, one rifle, one soul soaked in hate. And in 4 days, he had dropped 3 Vekari elites. Each one alone would have made him a legend in Marine bars. But Rylan wasn't gunning for stories. He was gunning for revenge. Snow pelted the outer ridgeline in white sheets. The wind screamed like a dying animal. Visibility, 10 meters max. Rylan crouched inside the hollow of a crashed UAV drone, breath held, heartbeat measured. His rifle, a battered long-range DMR with a modified gas vent and Dura-rig scope, rested across his lap like a sleeping beast. A shimmer in the distance. He adjusted his lens. Vekari scent stalker. Cloaked in active camo, dragging a scent sifter across the snow, scanning for pheromonal trace patterns. The thing was built like a nightmare, elongated limbs, spined back, and skin that gleamed wetly like a scalped predator. Rylan counted the steps. Measured wind drift. Compensated for pulse rhythm. Then he exhaled. The shot snapped like ice splitting. The bullet punched through its cloaking field and obliterated half its skull. The body dropped twitching. No time to celebrate. He was up, moving through the whiteout, boots silent, rifle swinging low. He knew how they'd answer. Not with rage. Not with blind charges. With traps. The next kill came minutes later. A thermal mine, hidden beneath a thin sheet of flexible frost plating. He spotted the disturbance just in time, skidded sideways, flung a thermite charge toward the depression. Boom. A Vekari scout burst from cover, shrieking in its native tongue, plasma bolt roaring from its gauntlet. Rylan shoulder-rolled under it, drew his monoblade in one clean motion, and jammed it upward between its ribs. Sizzling blood poured onto the snow. Rylan didn't stop to watch it die. Inside the remains of the central compound, the Vekari wool pack regrouped. 8 remaining. They spoke in guttural harmonics, communicating in a mix of pheromone bursts and neural link pulses. The Alpha stood at the center, a towering brute with tribal etchings carved into his exoplating. His lower jaw was made from the fused spine of a Terran soldier. He spoke just once. Let the ghost run. We will skin his spirit. They deployed their final strategy, the fog ritual. A dome of electromagnetic haze began pulsing from their command totem. Snow condensed unnaturally. Shadows thickened. Light bent inward. The whole ridge became a hallucination. Human tech would glitch. Optics would bleed. But Rylan wasn't running optics. He was running instinct. And he wasn't the only shadow in the storm. Just past the 43rd hour, something shifted. Not in the air. In the pattern. The Vekari paused. Even their storm-bred nerves tensed. Their scent trackers froze in place, tongues flicking with confusion. Because the wind had stopped. Not lessened. Stopped. No more howl. No more bite. Just stillness. That's when he appeared. At the far end of the ridge, emerging from a frozen bank of collapsed terrain and smoke. A rider. The beast he sat on looked grown, not built, a quadruped biomech, black as obsidian, muscles of alloy under stretched synth hide. It hissed steam from its nostrils and left molten footprints in the snow. The rider was worse. Tall. Slender. Wrapped in a shredded dark cloak that billowed without breeze. Face hidden under a frost-laced hood. No visible weapons. No insignia. No signal ping. No heat. One of the Vekari aimed a plasma hook cannon. The rider didn't flinch. He dismounted. Walked forward. Slowly, deliberately, until he stood at the edge of the outer ridge, looking down at the cratered remnants of Ice Ridge Station. The Vekari moved to intercept. Then he pulled back the hood. Rylan saw it first through his scope, heart skipping. Pale face. Clean jawline. Short silver hair, damp with ice melt. Eyes that burned with a dead light. Not rage, not fury. Just cold execution. Twink. But carved from a different breed. Not Earth Forces. Not corporate. Not even Rogue PMC. The cloak parted slightly, revealing only one thing. A massive revolver. 6 chambers. Earth steel. Forged for hand cannon class shells. Banned on half the colonies. Rylan blinked once. He'd seen that face before. On a Black Flag Ops terminal. Code name, Revenant. The man who wasn't supposed to exist. The first Vekari charged, blades drawn. Revenant didn't reach for the gun. He simply stepped aside. Let the alien pass. Then grabbed it mid-stride by the lower jaw and upper skull. And twisted. A sickening crack. Spine severed. Body collapsed mid-swing. Second Vekari opened fire. Revenant dodged the bolt by shifting 6 centimeters. Barely moved. Let it fly past. Then he raised the revolver. It didn't fire. It erupted. The shot cracked the sky. The bolt punched through the Vekari's chest armor and detonated inside. Limbs flew. Blood steamed on snow. The rest of the pack backed up a step. Rylan, watching from behind a shattered comms array, whispered into the storm. Holy shit. He chambered a new round. And for the first time in 4 days, he smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, Ice Ridge wasn't dead yet. The inside of the crash-wrecked hauler was dark, thick with smoke and frozen ash. Metal groaned under the shifting pressure of the storm outside. What used to be a thermal rig for transporting, was now a shattered cage of hull plates, flickering wires, and scorched bodies. Rylan wiped a gash across his temple, vision doubling before snapping back. His rifle was empty. His left gauntlet was cracked. And he was down to his backup blades, short mono-edge daggers with no shielding left on the hilts. He could taste the cold blood on his tongue. Not his. Not all of it, anyway. The 3 Vekari elite bodies at his feet was still twitching. One had died screaming, throat cut, chest torn open. The others had tried to flank, fast and quiet. Rylan had been faster. And louder. He stood still, crouched behind a shattered containment crate, heartbeat in his ears. Then, crunch. Snow shifted. Just outside. Heavy boot. Not his. He turned and slid low behind cover, blades drawn tight against his forearms. Another step. Closer. Then the wall exploded inward. Metal and ice launched across the chamber, smoke billowing in behind the figure that stepped through. Cloaked. Broad-shouldered. Boots silent on the steel. His revolver gleamed silver-black, barrel still hot from the shot. Rylan blinked. He knew that silhouette. Everyone in Reckon had heard the stories, whispered in blackout drops and last breath recoveries. Revenant. Mirage Protocol's final burn. A soldier designed for death in places no one should survive. No confirmed footage. Just stories. Warnings. You're late, Rylan muttered, keeping his stance low. Revenant didn't answer. He stepped past the smoking wall breach, checking angles. No wasted motion. Everything he did screamed lethal purpose, and something else, too. Pain. Deep. Wired into his stance like a fault line. Without looking, Revenant said, "More coming." 8 signatures. Moving fast. Rylan grunted. "You read that through the fog?" Revenant tapped the side of his temple. "I don't use EarthNet." Then he pointed to the left. "Kill corridor. Take that side. They'll breach in pairs." Rylan looked down at his cracked gauntlet and dulled blades. "Fine," he said, standing. "Let's see if the legends bleed." The Valkyrie came in hot. 2 through the top vent. 1 through the floor, plasma claws active. The fog outside had thickened again, muting their footfalls. But not enough. Revenant opened fire the instant one came into sight. Boom. Chest ruptured. Alien down. Rylan moved at the same time, sliding under a pipe, flipping into a roll. He planted one dagger in the calf of the floor crawler, kicked up, and sliced across its face. Screaming. Another leapt from above, shrieking. Rylan caught it midair with a knee to the throat and drove both daggers into its ribs, twisting hard. He landed with it under him, pinned, bleeding out into the floor grates. Then Revenant moved, fast as hell. He dropped into the space beside Rylan and kicked a plasma blade off the ground, catching it mid-air. In one fluid motion, he spun, buried it in the next Valkyrie's eye socket, and fired his revolver into the neck of another charging from the side. 4 down. No words exchanged. Just kill signals and instinct. More footsteps. 2 more elites stepped through the breached hull, one massive, wielding a scythe-like arc weapon, the other carrying a drone emitter on its back, already hissing with charge. "They've got counterfield," Rylan said, eyes narrowing. Revenant holstered his revolver, drew a second blade from inside his cloak, this one long, flat, matte black. "Then we cut it before they activate." They moved as one. Rylan sprinted low and fast, darting between wreckage. The emitter operator spotted him, turned with its twin shoulder cannons, but Revenant flanked from the other side, caught one arm, twisted, and ripped it off at the joint. Rylan leapt, driving his blade through the emitter node on the creature's back. Sparks. Screams. The big one charged him. Too slow. Rylan ducked under the arc blade and kicked off the wall, twisting midair. Revenant slid into position behind the charging beast, kicked its knee sideways, and slammed his blade through the back of its neck. A wet pop. Spinal breach. The alien crumpled. 7 down. The last one didn't attack. It stood watching, tall, plated, with glyphs carved into its armor. A war judge cast. "Valkyrie, elite among elites. You are the butcher," it rasped. Voice thick with venom. Revenant stepped forward. Blood on his hands. Blade still dripping. "You're late." The Valkyrie tilted its head. "I came to collect your skull. Not your words. I'm fresh out of those, too." Then he moved. They met mid-stride, twin gods of death clashing in the ice ruin. The Valkyrie brought down a bladed staff. Revenant caught it on his arm guard, twisted his body sideways, and slammed an elbow into the alien's throat. Bones cracked. Rylan sprinted forward to assist, but the alien kicked him back, hard enough to send him flying into the wall. Revenant didn't miss the window. He caught the staff mid-spin, reversed it, and drove the sharpened end into the Valkyrie's side. It shrieked. He ripped it free, spun behind the alien, and drove his revolver into its back. Click. Empty. The alien laughed, even through blood. Revenant didn't. He dropped the revolver, caught the alien's lower jaw, and tore it off. The war judge staggered. Then Revenant pulled a plasma charge from his belt and shoved it into the alien's mouth cavity. "Swallow that." He turned away. Boom. Blood and ash sprayed across the walls. Silence. Rylan sat against a crate, coughing blood. "I thought you were just a ghost story." Revenant walked past, retrieving his revolver, then stopped telling stories. Outside, the fog parted. 8 alien corpses steaming in the cold. One burned to ash. One missing most of its face. Revenant stood at the breach, watching the horizon. "They weren't scouts," he said. Rylan stood, wobbling. "Then what?" "Hunters," Revenant said. "Second wave's coming. Bigger. trained for suppression and target capture. Us. You. Ryland felt his throat tighten. Why me? Revenant turned to him, just once. Because you survived their opening kill net. And now you're a loose thread. They want your scream recorded. Ryland spat blood on the floor. Then I'll make sure they don't get it. The wind howled louder. From across the ice ridge, figures moved. Dozens. No fog now. No ritual shielding. Just the cold. And the inevitability of blood. Revenant holstered his weapon. Checked his coat. Looked to Ryland. You ready to paint the snow red? Ryland nodded. Together, the two twinks stood at the shattered edge of the world, the ridge below them glowing with alien hunters, and they didn't blink. No surrender. No retreat. Only war. And the snow was just another battlefield waiting to be stained. The ice ridge stretched for 7 kilometers, a cracked glacier shelf wrapped in jagged stone and whipping snow. Beneath it, a buried colony outpost. Above it, death. And right now, that death was coming in fast. Ryland Ash adjusted the grip on his salvaged plasma carbine. The charge cell was blinking red, maybe 20 shots left, tops. His backup blades were dulled, coated in alien ichor and frostbite. He looked to Revenant, who knelt near the ridge crest, cloak snapping in the wind. The man had no helmet. Just a bare face, dusted with ash and old blood. Ryland asked, "How many do you see?" Revenant tilted his head slightly. 4 to 6. Maybe more. Elite caste. All of them. Ryland exhaled. Great. The air trembled as the alien phalanx drew into view. They moved in disciplined pods of 4, plasma bowmen in the rear, shock troopers up front, war sergeants scattered through the formation like sentient blades. Their armor pulsed with crimson etchings. Their war drums were silent. They didn't need noise. The message was clear. They were here to erase the last human witness. And then they'd come for Earth's forward colonies, with proof that the ridge had fallen without a fight. Ryland spat. Guess we'd disappoint them. Revenant stood. He slung his revolver low on his thigh and cracked his neck once. You flank left. Don't stop moving. Ryland nodded and sprinted across the snow, weaving through ruined outcrop and half-frozen corpses. His legs burned, but his pulse didn't spike. He was past adrenaline. Past fear. This was pure vengeance now. The Feist Vekari squad reached the ridge's edge. Their scout's foot landed directly on a thin-looking patch of ice. Crack. A buried charge, Revenants. Boom. The scout vanished in a blast of frost and shrapnel. Its team staggered back, but too late. Revenant dropped from above with both blades drawn and split the lead shock trooper in half before it could raise a defense. He twisted, caught the second one mid-turn, and slammed his boot into its chest, launching it over the ridge. Then he rolled low, drawing his revolver, and fired 3 precise shots, 2 to the war sergeant's head, 1 through the back of the last's knee. All 4 down. He didn't stop moving. Revenant flowed like wind, sprinting across the ridge with a cloak full of hidden steel. Every movement was meant to end something. Below, Ryland crashed into a bowman squad. He dove under a plasma arrow, slid between 2 of them, and cut deep across their calves. One fell. The other turned, screaming, and got a blade through the throat. Ryland kicked the corpse into the third, tore his blade free, and stabbed the 4th clean through the mouth. He spun up into a kneeling stance, carbine raised, and fired into the backs of 2 advancing elites trying to flank Revenant. 1 shot. 2 kills. They kept coming. The next wave hit with shock drills and kinetic grenades. Snow blasted in all directions, blinding, deafening. Revenant emerged from the haze, with smoke rising off his coat and blood running down his forearms. One eye was half-closed, leaking red. His jaw was clenched like iron. Ryland dropped beside him, panting. We're not gonna make it if they flank again. Revenant pointed to the eastern ridge. That crevice, narrow, and closed. If we force them into it, they'll lose the numbers advantage. You sure? I'm not planning to survive, Revenant said flatly. Ryland looked at him. Well, I am. Then he shoved a fresh charge into his carbine and broke into a sprint toward the crevice. They made their stand in a trench of old mining debris and broken crawler pots. Blood soaked the snow. Ice cracked beneath every bootstep. The Vekari came in force, sending a war sergeant first, double blades, triple armor, no soul. It leapt into the crevice with a roar. Ryland dodged left. Revenant met the charge head-on. Clang. Steel sparked. Revenant caught the first blow on his cloak, laced with reactive ally. The fabric shredded, but the blade bounced. He twisted, elbowed the Valkyrie in the gut, and spun behind it, jamming a spike into its spine. It shrieked. Ryland took the opening and launched himself off a metal slab, driving both blades down into its collarbone. The alien died gargling its own blood. Then came 6 more. Ryland fought like a demon, narrow dodges, fluid motion, striking arteries and tendons. He caught one alien's wrist, twisted, and sliced its arm off at the elbow before driving his blade through its eye. Another tried to flank him. He ducked, kicked its knee backward, and stabbed through the base of its skull. Revenant was worse. He didn't dodge. He took hits, then delivered death. A bowman's plasma arrow burned a hole through his side. He didn't even flinch. He caught a shock trooper by the throat, crushed its windpipe, then bit off its ear and shoved a knife up through its jaw. He slammed one elite into the wall and ripped out its heart. Their kill zone piled with corpses. But the Valkyrie didn't retreat. They sent the Sable King. 10 feet tall. Armor black as void. 8-limbed exoframe fused to its flesh, each arm bearing a weapon from a different conquered world. A voice echoed from its speaker chest. You cannot win. You cannot hide. I am the ending of names. Revenant stepped forward, revolver raised. Then end mine. The Sable King moved like a machine possessed. 4 blades swung in unison. Revenant ducked one, blocked the second, and took the third to the chest. Blood sprayed. Ryland screamed. Revenant. But the man didn't fall. He headbutted the Sable King, hard enough to dent its mask, then dropped low and stabbed a concealed spike into the alien's inner thigh, a weak point. The king roared, kicked him back, and advanced. Ryland threw himself onto the monster's back, stabbing furiously. The Sable King slammed him into a wall, twice, but Ryland held on, carving up into its spine. Revenant stood again, limping, vision swimming. He pulled one last charge. A minifusion rod. Not legal. Not stable. Suicide grade. He activated it. The rod began to whine. Bright white. He looked at Ryland. Jump. Ryland didn't ask. He rolled free, just as Revenant slammed the rod into the Sable King's chest and wrapped both arms around it. Welcome to Ith. Boom. A white nova. The ice cracked. The ridge screamed. The Sable King disintegrated into fire, blood, and ash. Silence. The remaining Valkyrie stood still, stunned, leaderless, terrified. And then they ran. Ryland coughed, dragging himself out from the burning wreckage. His coat was in tatters. Blood from a dozen cuts streamed down his neck. He limped to the blast crater. Smoke. Flesh. Ash. In the center, a hand. Metal. Burned black. Fingers still clenched around the spent rod casing. Revenant was gone. Ryland fell to his knees beside the crater. Eyes closed. Chest heaving. He stayed like that for a long time. The snow fell harder now. But it wasn't white anymore. The underground colony was buried deep beneath the ice ridge, a maze of corridors and sublevel networks that had once housed hundreds of miners and scientists. Now, it was little more than a forgotten tomb, decaying with every passing year, every tremor of war. The walls were lined with rusted pipe systems and shattered control panels. The atmosphere was thick with the stench of stale air, and the faint taste of something was death. Rylanesh moved through the colony's deepest levels. His carbine slung low, every step a calculated risk. His body was a map of scars now, a war trophy armed with every alien he had fought, every battle he had survived. But inside him, the rage burned hotter than the ice storms above. Revenant had died in his arms. The man who had hunted through the galaxy like a shadow, cutting down anyone who stood between him and his purpose. And now Ryland was alone. Or, at least, that's what he told himself. The old lift system groaned and crackled as Ryland descended deeper. His eyes scanned the dark corridors. No movement. Nothing but the echo of his footsteps and the muffled hum of the colony's dormant systems. The air grew colder the farther he went, his breath visible in the gloom. The lower levels had been sealed long ago after the initial assault, a strategic decision by the first wave of the Valkyrie to isolate any survivors. If there were any. Ryland rounded a corner, pulling a long-range scope from his pack and attaching it to the carbine. He knew they were out there, waiting. He had felt it when the Valkyrie had first arrived, a vibration in his bones, an unnatural stillness in the air that preceded the carnage. They were always hunting. He moved with purpose, eyes narrowing as his boots made little sound on the metal floor. It was instinct now. The hunt had become his. The alien bastards had torn his world apart, killed his friends, and burned the future of every living thing he had known. He would make them bleed until the ridge was painted red. The first sign of life came when Ryland reached an old storage bay. He crouched, pulling his carbine to shoulder level, his finger hovering over the trigger. The sound of movement was faint, a soft click of a distant door opening, followed by the whisper of boots on metal. He slipped into position behind a stack of broken equipment and waited. 1. He spotted the silhouette of a lone Valkyrie scout in the far end of the corridor, moving cautiously toward a door. The alien was scanning the area, its helmet reflecting the weak light from the colony's emergency lamps. Ryland's pulse quickened. The kill had to be swift, clean. The element of surprise was his advantage. He drew a blade, short, fast, precise. A twink's weapon. Silent. Deadly. The scout turned just as Ryland pounced. His dagger sank into the Valkyrie's side. The creature gasped, its weapon discharging into the ceiling. Ryland twisted the blade, cutting upward, slicing through flesh, and then snapped the alien's neck with a swift twist. It dropped, silent, a fresh corpse to feed the cold. Ryland stood over the body, panting, wiping blood from his face. It was nothing personal. The Valkyrie didn't deserve mercy. They never did. He moved deeper into the complex, knowing this was only the beginning. The alien strike force was still out there, hiding in the shadows, just waiting for him to make the first mistake. But there would be no mistakes. Not this time. The colony was silent again, but Ryland could hear the distant hum of the enemy's pulse shields and the low crackle of their communications gear. They were organizing, setting up for the kill. But they weren't ready for what was coming. Ryland finally reached the lowermost sublevel. The air was frigid here, and the lights flickered in intervals, casting eerie shadows on the cracked walls. This level had been used for storage, and the crates that lined the hallways were marked with long-forgotten symbols, shipments of weapons, medical supplies, and who knew what else. His boots crunched against the frozen ground as he passed by broken doors and smashed equipment. The hallway ahead opened up into a large chamber, its ceilings high enough to hold the remnants of a research facility once dedicated to studying the ice's unique properties. The walls were lined with glass panels, each one now shattered or warped with age. Ryland stopped at the entrance to the chamber, sensing a change in the air. It was the same feeling he'd gotten back on the ridge, before the battle. The stillness before the storm. He stepped inside, keeping low. The Valkyrie were waiting. A large squad had set up position along the walls, hidden behind overturned equipment. Their weapons were primed, their shields activated, but they didn't yet know where he was. This was the moment Ryland had been training for, the perfect strike. His hands were steady as he raised the carbine, eyes locking onto the first target. He squeezed the trigger. One down. Before the shot had even hit the ground, Ryland was already moving, darting to the next position, shifting into a blur of motion as his body slid beneath the shadows. His aim was flawless. Another shot, another Valkyrie elite dropped to the floor, its armor crumpling in on itself. 2 down. But the Valkyrie weren't fooled for long. They returned fire, splitting the air with blasts of plasma. Ryland rolled to the side, barely avoiding a barrage of deadly energy, but he didn't stop. His heart was pounding now, the adrenaline surging through his veins. Each kill drove him faster, harder. 3, 4, 5. One by one, the Valkyrie fell. But there was no time to celebrate. Another wave was incoming, and this time, they were ready. Ryland dug behind a collapsed crate, reloading his carbine as the next squad approached, heavier, more armored, more aggressive. The aliens' shields flared bright as they moved into position, their weapons roaring to life with an onslaught of plasma and pulse fire. Ryland's eyes flashed as he saw them advance. He had one chance. Without hesitation, He sprinted forward, carbine raised. He fired 2 quick shots, both hitting their targets, but the remaining soldiers closed in, forcing him to jump aside as a pulse grenade exploded beside him. Pain. He gasped as the shockwave sent him tumbling across the floor, his vision flickering in and out. The burn of the blast left him with a sick feeling in his stomach, but he wasn't done. Not yet. He twisted his body, gripping the plasma carbine as it fell to the ground, and picked up the nearest weapon, a short-range plasma cutter. The next Valkyrie didn't see him coming. The cutter slashed across its neck, cutting through the alien's shields and deep into its flesh. Blood spurted, and the creature crumpled into a heap. Ryland's mouth was dry. His limbs felt heavy, but he could hear the enemies closing in, more, even more, from the far side of the chamber. He had no choice but to keep moving, keep fighting. The ground shook again, a reminder that the war outside was still alive, still demanding death. But Ryland wasn't concerned with the future. He was concerned with the next kill, the next fight. He turned, diving into the darkness of another hallway, hoping it would lead him to a better position. But as he sprinted through the complex's corridors, there was only one thought in his head: kill them all. The final sublevel of the alien stronghold was unlike anything Ryland had encountered in the entire war. Where the upper levels had been cold, decaying, and full of dust and bones, this place was alive, an unholy fusion of alien technology and human machinery. The walls were lined with alien sigils, glowing faintly in sickly green and purple hues. The air was thick with a stench of burning circuits and chemical vapors. He moved cautiously, his every step a calculated risk. He had nothing left but the last vestiges of his resolve and the weapons in his hands. His body was a map of wounds, bruises, and broken bones, but still he pressed on. His mind was numb, empty except for one thought: finish it. The Valkyrie had taken everything from him. His world, his allies, his future. Now it was time to pay the price. And Ryland was going to collect. The hallway opened up into a massive chamber. It stretched out impossibly far, filled with twisting catwalks and massive machines humming with energy. The ceiling was high, a labyrinth of alien tech and human-made structure intertwined into a grotesque mess of pipes, wires, and tanks. The machines hummed, pulsed, and occasionally sent out bursts of electricity that crackled through the air like lightning. The chamber was the heart of the enemy's operations, the epicenter of their war on Earth. Ryland stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He could feel the pulse of the place, the beat of its heart as it thrummed with power. This was where it all ended. Either he'd be swallowed by the darkness, or he would drag every lost alien to hell with him. Then he heard it, the sound of something big moving in the shadows. The Valkyrie leader emerged from the darkness. It was taller than the others, its armor gleaming black like the abyss. Its faceplate was a flat, featureless surface, except for a single slit where its eyes glowed red. It moved with a terrifying grace, the shadows swirling around it as if it was part of the very fabric of the chamber. Ryland didn't need to hear the creature speak to understand its purpose. This was the one who had ordered the slaughter of his people. The one who had commanded the Valkyrie's attack on the ice ridge. The one who had wiped out entire battalions of humans, and now stood before him as the last barrier between survival and extinction. Ryland's grip tightened on his carbine. He had only one shot at this. The Valkyrie leader raised one massive hand, its fingers curling like the claws of a beast. The hum of the chamber grew louder, a crackling, unstable energy building as the leader's chest plate opened, revealing a massive energy cannon. It was charging, preparing to unleash its destructive force on him. Ryland had no intention of letting it fire. He moved fast, faster than any human had the right to move. He dove to the left, rolling behind a massive power conduit that connected the walls of the chamber. Plasma shots ricocheted off the structure as the Valkyrie leader fired, but Ryland was already gone, darting from cover to cover, using the unstable machinery to his advantage. The Valkyrie fired again, and again, but each time it missed, Ryland closing the distance bit by bit. The leader hissed, its voice mechanical and distorted. "You cannot stop us. We will consume your world." Ryland didn't answer. He just kept moving, his carbine raised, his eyes locked on the target. The alien leader's cannon fled again. This time, Ryland was too close. He rolled beneath the beam, firing as he went, hitting the Valkyrie leader's legs. The shots didn't penetrate the armor, but they did stagger it, forcing it back a step. The Valkyrie leader roared in fury and swung its massive weapon toward him. But Rylan was already on it. He dropped his carbine, drew his blades, and launched himself at the alien. The battle was a blur of movement. Rylan dodged and weaved between strikes, his blades flashing as they met the Valkyrie's armored limbs. Each clash sent shockwaves through the room, the sound of metal on metal echoing like thunder. He didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Every move was a calculated strike, designed to wear down the alien, to find the weakness hidden beneath the thick armor. His blades cut through the alien's plating, sparking with each impact, but the Valkyrie leader was relentless. It countered every strike, its energy cannon swinging toward him, trying to finish the job. Rylan's body screamed in protest as the Valkyrie slammed a fist into his chest, sending him sprawling to the floor. His breath left him in a painful gasp, his body ragged from the constant punishment. But he wasn't finished. He forced himself to his feet, ignoring the pain in his ribs, and charged again. His blades met the leader's chest with a sickening thud. Sparks flew. The Valkyrie stumbled, but didn't fall. It backhanded him, sending him sprawling across the floor again. But this time, Rylan's hand found something, a loose power conduit, still alive with energy. His fingers wrapped around it, and he grinned through blooded teeth. The final push came when the Valkyrie leader took a step back, raising its cannon for another blast. Rylan saw the opening. With all the strength he had left, he threw himself at the leader, shoving the power conduit into the creature's exposed abdomen. The Valkyrie's eyes widened in shock as Rylan triggered the energy flow. A surge of electricity ripped through the alien's body, arcing through its chest plate, frying its insides. The leader screamed, its voice a guttural howl of rage and pain, but it was too late. Rylan shoved the conduit deeper, pouring every last ounce of his energy into the act. Sparks flew, and the alien's body began to convulse. Its limbs jerked uncontrollably, and then, with a final, deafening roar, the leader exploded in a burst of light. The chamber fell silent. Rylan stood in the center of the wreckage, his body heaving with exhaustion, his heart racing. The air smelled of burnt ozone and death. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he thought he might collapse, but he held himself steady. He had done it. He had ended it. The Valkyrie were dead. But the victory felt hollow. The war was over, but it had cost him everything. He looked down at his hands, blooded and broken, and realized that nothing was left for him. No comrades. No home. No future. The last of the Valkyrie had fallen, but at what cost? He walked out of the chamber, leaving the wreckage behind, and climbed back up through the labyrinth of corridors. The silence of the dead colony pressed in on him from all sides. The war had taken everything, and in the end, there was no one left to fight for. As Rylan ascended the final lift, a cold wind greeted him from the surface. He emerged into the light of the ice ridge, where the endless snowstorm still raged, the world unchanged. The ground was littered with the remains of the battle, alien corpses frozen in place, their weapons scattered across the ice. Rylan stood alone on the ridge, his breath clouding in the cold air. He looked out over the wasteland, the frozen expanse stretching endlessly in every direction. For a moment, he wondered if he could ever feel anything again, if the fire inside him would ever burn as brightly as it had before. He didn't have the answer. He never would. But one thing was certain. The war was over. The enemy was gone. And Rylan Ash had won.